In 2017, a cigar-shaped object entered our solar system. We called it a rock. We named it Oumuamua. But immediately after it left, the skies over Earth changed. Navy pilots started seeing cubes inside of spheres. Drones swarmed nuclear sites. And the Pentagon, an organisation that never admits anything, suddenly admitted UFOs are real. Why did the most secretive government on Earth suddenly decide to tell us the truth after 70 years of lies? Let's go back to the beginning. October 19, 2017. The Pan-STARRS telescope in Hawaii detects a faint point of light moving across the sky. At first glance, it's nothing special. Just another rock in the solar system full of other rocks. But within hours, astronomers, they realized something was terribly wrong. The orbit was hyperbolic. That means it wasn't orbiting our sun. It was moving too fast to be captured by the sun's gravity. It came from interstellar space. It cut through our solar system, and it was on its way out. They named it Oumuamua, Hawaiian for scout, or messenger from afar. That's a poetic name. But as the data started pouring in, the poetry, it turned to panic. This wasn't a comet. Comets, they heat up when they get close to the sun. They outgas. They create a tail of dust and water vapor. That's basic physics. Oumuamua passed inside the orbit of Mercury, blasted by our solar radiation, and showed absolutely zero coma. No tail, no gas. That meant it was indeed a solid object. As Oumuamua moved away from the sun, it did something that asteroids don't do. It accelerated. Gravity works in a very specific way. When you throw a ball up, it slows down as it climbs. When an object leaves the solar system, the sun's gravity should be pulling it back, slowing it down every second. But Oumuamua, it sped up. In physics, we call this non-gravitational acceleration. For a comet, that is normal. The gas shooting out the back acts like a rocket engine. But remember, Oumuamua has no gas, no tail, no visible propulsion. Yet something indeed was pushing it. It was pushing itself away from the sun. Then there was the shape. We've never seen a space rock that looks like a cigar. It was 10 times longer than it was wide. In nature, asteroids are potatoes. They're roundish, they're lumpy. To get something long and thin, you need engineering. You need structure. And finally, the tumble. It wasn't spinning on a clean axis. It was tumbling, end over end, and in a complex, rhythmic cycle. Mainstream science told us this was chaos, that it had been hit by something billions of years ago. But if you look at the light curve, the tumble allowed it to scan everything in every direction as it moved. If you were building a sensor probe to map a solar system, you wouldn't stabilize it. You would tumble it, so your camera could sweep 360 degrees without needing complex motors. Loeb, the chair of Harvard Astronomy Department, a man with more credentials than I've had hot dinners, looked at the data and he said the unsayable. He said this fits a profile of a light sail. This is likely artificial. The scientific community mocked him. They laughed. They called it a rock, a nitrogen iceberg, a dust bunny even. They came up with theory after theory to explain away the acceleration without using the A word. Aliens. But while the scientists were arguing, the intelligence community was panicking. Because here is the connection that nobody wants to talk about. Here is the smoking gun. Oumuamua was detected in October 2017. Now, it swings past Earth. It behaves in a way consistent with observational surveying. It accelerates out of the system. 2 months later, on December 16, 2017, the New York Times published the most famous article in the history of ufology: glowing auras and black money. For the first time ever, the US government admitted to the existence of AATIP, the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, and they released the videos. Gimbal Fleur 1, the Tic Tac. Ask yourself, why did they do this? Why after Roswell, after Phoenix Lights, after 70 years of swamp gas and weather balloons, did the Pentagon suddenly decide to show its cards in December 2017? The coincidence theorists will tell you it was just a leak, that their hands were forced. But in my line of work, leaks, they are strategic. Now, here is the reality. Oumuamua passed Earth, and if something was already present, Oumuamua would have been impossible to miss. It wasn't just a passive flyby. It may indeed have interacted with assets that were already here, deep underwater, buried in the mountains, and dormant in our oceans. The US Navy detected that signal, or more likely, they detected the response. Immediately after Oumuamua left, the UAP activity on our sensors didn't just spike. It changed. The objects became noticeably more active. The governments realized that keeping this secret was no longer an option, because that phenomenon was no longer hiding. They released those videos to prepare us. They started the soft disclosure, because they knew what was coming next. If 2017 was indeed the wake-up call, the years that followed were the mobilization. Between 2018 and 2024, the behaviour of unidentified anomalous phenomenon changed fundamentally. Before this timeline, UFOs were elusive. They were lights in the distance that ran away when chased. After Oumuamua, they became more direct and less evasive. Brazen even. If we go back to July 2019, the USS Kidd, the USS Rafael Peralta, and the USS John Flynn, all Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers equipped with the Aegis combat system, were conducting maneuvers off of the coast of California near the Channel Islands. At night, under the cover of fog, was when the swarm arrived. Deck logs describe drones swarming the ships, but these weren't DJI Phantoms flown by teenagers off the beach. These were objects that stayed airborne for hours. They moved at speeds exceeding 40 knots, matching the destroyers in high winds and low visibility. They hovered directly over the flight decks. They pulsed. Their lights did not match FAA regulations. The Navy couldn't identify them. They couldn't jam them. They couldn't shoot them down. The debunkers screamed Chinese drones. They said a foreign adversary was launching them from a cargo ship nearby. But think about that for a second. If China or Russia wanted to spy on the US Navy, would they use bright flashing lights? Would they harass a destroyer that has legal authority to blow them out of the sky? No. You spy quietly. You spy from satellites. And you don't poke the bear unless you want the bear to know you're there. This wasn't espionage. This was a stress test. Fast forward to December 2023 and early 2024, Langley Air Force Base. Now, it's the home of the most advanced fighter in history, the F-22 Raptor. For weeks, mystery drones violated the airspace over Langley, swarms of them moving at night. The Air Force was indeed paralysed, and General Mark Kelly, the commander of the Air Combat Command, admitted they did not know what they were. They had to ground the F-22s. They had to divert traffic. Think about it for a second. The most powerful military on Earth was grounded by lights in the sky that they couldn't catch and couldn't kill. Then there's the orbs. While the swarms harassed our bases, the Middle East began reporting about the Mosul orb. It's a metallic sphere about the size of a beach ball, flying with no control surfaces, no heat signature, and no propulsion. These aren't giant Tic Tacs. These are smaller, tactical. We see them in Iraq, we see them in Syria, and we've seen them over Ukraine. Why war zones, you ask? If you were an alien intelligence and you wanted to understand humanity, what would you study first? Here's the detail we really connect to that question. Humanity didn't just wait to be discovered. We announced it. We made ourselves noisy as heck. In 1977, we launched the Voyager probes, and we didn't do it silently. We bolted a gold record to the sides, mapped our locations, images of our body, our biology, our voices, our weapons, and also the sounds of our world. We engraved instructions on how to find us. Voyager wasn't an accident. It was a declaration. And once that declaration crossed interstellar space, it couldn't be taken back. So if something did notice, if it wanted to understand our capabilities, it wouldn't go looking at a shopping mall. It would look at war, our warships, our fighters. It would watch us when we are using our best weapons. It would study our capacity for violence. And that brings us to the Sentinel theory. There is a persistent and unverified theory suggesting a manufacturing facility here on Earth, likely in the ocean, a mobile construction utility, if you will. It sits deep, dormant, manufacturing these orbs and drones to maintain a perimeter. For thousands of years it was on standby, monitoring, passive. But Oumuamua may have changed the setting from monitored to active. Oumuamua was the key. It passed by, transmitted the activation code, and the factory turned on. That's why the spheres are suddenly everywhere. That's why they are swarming our nuclear sites. Our warships, our fighters, they are preparing for battle space. And the government are aware of this. Why do you think the phrasing changed from UFO to UAP? Why do you think NASA joined the conversation? Why do you think that the Senate is holding hearings? They are trying to figure out how to tell the public that we are sharing our planet with a superior force, and the force is no longer sleeping. But if Oumuamua was indeed the scout, and the orbs are the drones, where's the cavalry? Where is the main force? If you look at the trajectory data from July 2025, you'll find your answer. It's not coming. It's already entered the room. July 2025. The Atlas survey in South Africa detects a new object. Catalogue name 3I Atlas. The I stands for interstellar, just like Oumuamua. This is the third interstellar object ever detected. But 3I Atlas isn't like the others. Borisov was clearly a comet. It looked like a comet and acted like a comet. Oumuamua was silver. We were told merely a dead rock that accelerated. 3I Atlas, on the other hand, it's wrong. Let's look at the anomalies. And remember, this is the data the astronomers have been scratching their heads over right now, while the media ignore it to talk about the latest celebrity breakup. First, the anti-tail. Usually a comet's tail points away from the sun, pushed by the solar wind. 3I Atlas has a prominent sunward fan, a spike of material pointing directly at the star it is approaching. Mainstream science call this a projection effect, apparently an optical illusion caused by the angle of the Earth. But we've seen projection effects before. They don't look like this. If you are a massive vessel moving at relativistic speed, or even high orbital speed, and you want to enter a solar system without shooting straight through it, you do have to brake. You've got to decelerate. How do you do that in a vacuum? You fire a plume of plasma or gas in the direction of travel. To an observer on Earth, that looks exactly like a sunward-facing tail. Second anomaly, the wobble. The light curve of 3I Atlas shifts every 7 hours. The brightness changes, but it doesn't just dim and brighten like a tumbling rock. The spectral analysis shows a shift in chemical composition of the coma. 1 hour it's heavy on carbon. 7 hours later it spikes in localized water vapor. Natural objects don't switch their outgassing vents on a timer, but a ship maneuvering, a ship adjusting its pitch and yaw to correct for insertion orbit, that itself would look exactly like rhythmic chemical bursts. And finally, the reaction. In December 2025, just a month ago, the Breakthrough Lesson Project, the biggest SETI initiative on Earth, quietly commandeered the Green Bank telescope. They pointed it at 3I Atlas for 48 continuous hours. Now, telescope time is expensive. You don't waste the Green Bank dish on a rock. unless you've got a very good reason to do so. They were listening for radio signals. They were listening for techno-signatures. They didn't publish the results, however. They just said, no conclusive evidence was found. Yet. Let's put the pieces together. 2017, Oumuamua the Scout enters the system. It tumbles, scans, and accelerates away. 2018 to 2024, the drones, or UAPs, are activated on Earth. They swarm our military, they test out defences, they map out nuclear capabilities. 2025, 3i Atlas appears. It is decelerating, manoeuvring, and it's massive. It's estimated to be 3 times the size of Oumuamua. This matches the same structure we teach in military doctrine. Step 1. Reconnaissance. Send a small fast unit, Oumuamua, to scout the terrain. Step 2. Awakening of forward operating bases. You activate sleeper assets in the theatre to harass and confuse the enemy. These are the orbs or swarms. Step 3. Deployment of the carrier group. Move the heavy assets into position. Now, this might be 3i Atlas. We have been staring at the trees, arguing about whether a blurry video of a tic-tac is real or just a camera glitch. Meanwhile, the forest is moving. The soft disclosure we are living through, the hearings, the whistleblowers, the slow trickle of admission, isn't happening because the government want to be transparent. It's happening because they're running out of time. They know 3i Atlas is coming. They know it's not a rock, and they know when it gets here, when it parks itself in high Earth orbit, or drops into our atmosphere. They will not be able to hide it anymore. We are like an uncontacted tribe. Think Sentinel Island, watching a drone fly over the trees and throwing spears at it. We think the drone is a god. We think the drone is the enemy. We don't realize that the drone is only the spotter for the battleship on the horizon. So the question isn't, are we alone? The question is, what happens when the landlord comes back to check on the property? Humanity has spent the last century shouting into the void, asking for signs. We sent out Voyager probes. We blasted radio waves into the cosmos. We begged the universe to notice us. But be careful what you wish for, because looking at the data, looking at the timeline of the last 8 years, it appears the universe noticed us, and it didn't send explanations. It sent data, and whatever comes next will not be subtle. Thanks for joining me here today, and remember, they rely on you forgetting, on you clicking away. Don't do it. Go deeper down the rabbit hole with this next video, and to make sure the signal can find you again, join the network, click subscribe here, and keep the light alive. This is Thinkavarium.